Well, this is the image we'll be turning into fine art, everybody. I'll be using Lightroom for this editing process, and I'm not doing any intro. I'm just going to dive straight into the editing process, and this method can change your images into black and white fine art. As you noticed, everybody, the first thing for creating black and white fine art images or even color fine art images is trying to get your image into long exposure. Here the sea was already quite calm and I had an exposure of around 50 seconds. So that is the first step of creating black and white fine art, in my opinion. And we're going to dive straight into it, everyone. I'm going to start using the exposure panel and we're going to do some global editing. My aim is to boost all the colors in the image. I know there's not much, but that gives us a head start of creating a much better perfect black and white fine art image. And I'm going to start by reducing a touch of highlights. I'm going to reduce it all the way down. I don't think I'll be touching the shadows, and I'm going to use the whites and increase it until I see clippings on my histogram, and I'm going to dial it down just a bit more. I'm going to do the same with the blacks until I see clippings on the histogram, and here I'm going to give it a touch of contrast and I'm going to reduce the exposure to around there, and that should be okay. I'm going to try and balance out the histogram, but I'm going to increase the blacks also to around there. So that should be okay for the exposure panel. I'm going to give it just a touch of texture, and I'm going to give it a touch of clarity. These are the first steps we always take before turning our images into black and white. The next step I'm going to do, everyone, is reduce the radius. I always increase the detail, hold down the masking, and hold down the Alt key on your keyboard, and we'll just be sharpening the white parts of the image, and I'm going to increase the sharpening to around 55. Next step I'm going to do, everybody, I'm going to reduce the image size to around there, and I'm going to go down to the blue primary saturation and increase the blues to around there. As you can see, we already have a lovely image in color. We have the sun coming from the right side here. It was sunrise, and we have some lovely color in the sea here and on the top of the clouds where the sun had risen. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to increase the red primary also, everyone. Don't worry about boosting too much color, because that's what we want before turning our image into black and white. So from here I'm going to increase a touch of vibrance also. And I'm going to give it an extra bit of tint. I know I have 47. I'm going to give it just a bit more. And here we're ready to turn our image into black and white. Don't worry about these clippings on the blacks here, the shadows. And here I'm going to turn it into black and white, and I, like my usual process, I go over to Photoshop. I'm going to right click on the image, and edit in Adobe Photoshop. Might be using Beta for this transformation to black and white. Well, now we're over into Photoshop, everybody, and I'm going to duplicate the image by dragging down to the plus sign on the bottom right hand corner. And from here I'm going to go to the adjustments layer here, the black and white circle down here on the right. I'm going to start off with black and white, and this is the main reason I told you to boost your colors before turning it into black and white. And I'm going to show you by moving the sliders, and you'll see it's going to affect every individual color in the image. Double click to go back where you were, and here I'm just going to increase the reds to the right side to around there. I'm going to try the yellows. It's affecting the sky. I'm going to leave it how they were. I'm not touching the blues. Try the cyan. Double click. Try the blues. It's affecting the sky and the bottom part of the sea. Double click. And I'm going to move it to the right. And I'm going to try the magenta also. And it's affecting the middle tones of the image. Double click and I'll leave it how they were. And here I'm going to go down to the adjustment panel again and click on gradient map. I'm going to double click on this gradient here because the black should be on the left and the whites should be on the right side. Just click on it and swap them around by moving these sliders here. And just press OK. Next thing, I'm going to click on this drop down window and I'm going to click on Classic. And there we have our black and white image. It's much better than using the one in Lightroom. You have a much perfect black and white image, because the one in Lightroom and Camera Raw, they give you a flat black and white image. And here we have more contrast in the image. Next thing, I'm gonna click on these three dot lines here and flatten image. And here I'll be taking it back over to Lightroom. I'm gonna press on File and click Save. And here we are back in Lightroom, everybody. And here we're gonna start our process of turning it into fine art now. First we turned it into black and white, and now we're turning it into black and white fine art. I'm gonna leave the image size how they are, how it is, and I'm gonna try the exposure panel once again. I don't turn it into a smart object because like that I can reuse the exposure panel once again. I'm gonna reduce the highlights. As you can see, we get much more detail in the clouds. I'm going to increase a bit of shadows now and increase a touch of whites. I'm going to reduce the blacks until I see clippings and go back up again. And from here I'm not going to touch anything else, and we're going to head straight to the masking. And this is where the fun part begins. The previous editing is normal editing, which I usually do, and the next part is the masking, which I really enjoy. Click on the masking here, and the first thing I always do is use the linear gradient. And I'm going to place it over the top part of the sky. I'm sure you won't find much black and white editing on the on the internet like I do, everyone. It's a very easy process, and it's a well-kept secret from other photographers who maybe don't like sharing their black and white image editing process. And these are one of the secrets that I'll be revealing. I'm going to start by placing the linear gradient over the sky, and I'm going to reduce the exposure to around there, and I'll be using another linear gradient, and I'm going to place it over the top part of the sky once again, and I'm going to reduce the exposure to around there. I'm going to use another linear gradient, but now I'm going to place it on the foreground, and I'm going to tilt it just a bit to even the blacks on the lower part of the foreground on the sea, and I'm going to decrease the exposure just to around there. So the next thing I'm going to do, everyone, I'm going to target the middle part of the image, these buildings here. I'm going to use select objects, and I'm going to mask around on these buildings here, and there we have a perfect mask. And here I'm just going to increase a touch of shadows to around there, and I'm going to do the same for the other side here. I'm going to use another mask and select objects, and I'm just going to paint away on this building here. You don't have to be precise when using this mask, and I'm going to let it render. Didn't do a very good job, no worries. I'll just carry on how it is, and I'm going to increase the shadows to around there. And the next thing I'm going to do, everybody, I'm going to use a luminance range, and I'm going to target the white parts, the brighter parts of the sky here. Don't worry about here. I'm just going to increase the exposure now to around there. Dial it down just a bit more, and that should be okay. The next thing I'm going to do is use a radial gradient, and I'm going to place it over this yacht here. Something like that. I'm just going to tilt it a bit, and I'm going to increase just a bit of exposure to around there. As you can see, the image is coming much better. And now I'm going to show you the before and after without the masking. We still have a few masks to do yet, and I'm going to show you the process so far. Click on the eyeball. That's without the mask, everyone, and that's with the mask. And you can see it's turning into a much better black and white fine art image. And here I'm going to use a radial gradient. Remember, when we were in the color image, I told you the sun was rising from the right side. Well, I'm going to place this radial gradient to about where the sun had risen, and I'm going to tilt it and move it out of the image. going to open it up a bit more and close it just a touch. And here I'm going to increase the exposure, and I'm going to head down to the dehaze and reduce the dehaze, so it's going to give us that glowy look to around 15. And the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to use another radial gradient, and I'm going to place it exactly to where the first radial gradient was, which was around here. I'm going to tilt it, open it up. I'm going to increase the feathering just a touch to around 80. I'm going to open it up, and here we'll be creating a vignette. I'm going to invert it. Always invert your vignettes, don't forget. And here I'm going to reduce the exposure. I'm going to show you the before and after of the masks, without the mask and with the mask. And the last thing I'm going to do, everybody, I'm going to head out of the masking now, and I'm going to head down and find the curve, the tone curve here. And here I'm just going to increase the highlights just a bit. Increase just a touch of white. And the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to head back to the masking, and I'm going to do a radial gradient again, and I'm going to just place it in the middle of the image. I'm going to invert it again, and I'll be doing another vignette, and I'm going to reduce the exposure to about there. I'm going to head out of the masking, and now I'm going to show you the before and after, and I'm going to press the eyeball, and there we have our image before all the masking, and that's with the masking. And here we have a perfect black and white image, and that's one of the secrets of transforming your black and white images into fine art. Like I said in the beginning, everyone, try and get your images into fine art. The first step is always trying to get a long exposure image. In my opinion, is considered fine art when it's in long exposure, and use your masking tools to create a much better black and white fine art image. Well, thank you everyone. I hope you learned a lot from this video, from this tutorial, and I hope you try this method on your black and white images. Please subscribe, hit the like button, share my video, and please leave any comments below, and I'll make sure to answer them. Thank you everyone, and I'll see you in another video.